not distributor. You don't see one. 2,000 people. Got me. It was like whatever. So ABC one day. He was trying to get his like. Yeah. He's a chill Hillary. I think he started it after. They can see your worst nightmare. So in North Carolina, they have very.
Hi everyone.
Yeah. In Colorado, they're bad.
Hello, thank you all for coming. Welcome to our third e-week session. We're very excited to have you here. My name is Adeze. I'm co-president of the Entrepreneurship and Venture Capital Club. In a few seconds, I'll be handing over to our moderator, Hailey. But I just wanted to show you what we are going to be doing today. So we have our lovely panel, and then we're going to have some time for Q&A, and we're going to close out. So pretty straightforward. Feel free to write down your questions that you may have, and then we'll get to it at the Q&A. So handing over to Hailey.
Thank you, David. And thank you to all of you for being here. My name's Hailey, for those of you who don't know. I'm a second year, and I'm very excited to moderate this panel today, titled Her Path, Innovating Established Industries. And we have some really great topics to cover. And as Adeze mentioned, at the end, we'll open it up to questions. But before we begin, I'd like to introduce our panelists, starting furthest away from me, Brittany. She's the founder and CEO of brandmerch.com, which is a full-service merchandise agency that designs custom products for renowned brands like Anheuser-Busch, L'Oreal, and SoulCycle. She is currently pursuing an MBA, she's a second year with me, as she launches her new venture, Open Door, a platform that utilizes AI-driven technology to automate and streamline corporate gifting. Brittany is passionate about blending local craftsmanship with technology to create a more sustainable and efficient approach to promotional product. Macy is a mom, investor, and entrepreneur. After excelling in finance at Wells Fargo, she dove into the startup world, driven by her belief that life is about turning chaos into opportunity. Following her startup journey, she pivoted into angel investing and co-founded KT Winery, a Black-owned and women-led winery with the flagship brand Mom Juice. Alongside her entrepreneurial ventures, Macy wears the hat of the host of the Only Moms podcast, a podcast where the focus is discussing all things good, bad, and those WTF moments of motherhood. With a knack for revitalizing teams and a passion for supporting women-led businesses, Macy's journey from finance to tech to entrepreneurship is marked by commitment to making a difference both professionally and in her community. Notably, she has invested over $1 million in women and people of color, furthering her dedication to fostering diversity and inclusivity in the business world. And finally, we have Mary Lacey, who's a 2021 graduate of UNC's Kenan-Flagler School of Business, where she earned the Chancellor's Hampton Shooping Award for Excellence in Business, the highest undergraduate honor. As an Honors Carolina Laureate and Robertson Scholar, she earned recognition for founding Eats to Seats as a sophomore. Upon graduation, Poets and Quants named her one of the best and brightest business majors nationally for the class of 2021. Recently, Mary Lacey was selected for the Forbes 30 Under 30 list, celebrating her impact in scaling Eats to Seats to over 40 venues across 10 states with a team of more than 5,000. Additionally, she delivered the 2024 undergraduate commencement speech at UNC Kenan-Flagler, becoming the youngest speaker in the school's history at age 24. If we can all give a warm welcome to Mary. Brittany, Macy, and Mary, thank you so much for being here. We're really excited to have you, and we're looking forward to having a very meaningful conversation. A little bit of housekeeping for everyone. As Adeze mentioned, we will have questions, so make sure you're writing those down during the panel. And I also wanted to let everybody know that this is a recorded session, so you can go back and view our conversation later on. So since we have a lot to get to in a super short window of time, I'd like to jump right in. And I'll have a series of questions, and if we can just go down the line for now, that would be great. So since this whole conversation is about breaking into established markets, can each of you share what some of the biggest challenges were that you faced when you first entered into your respective industries? Brittany.
Well, promotional goods is really saturated, so to stand out in the industry is really hard to break that started. Two things I did really early on really helped. The first one was strategically brand my company. And so the name Brand Merch, I got that. I didn't have a budget at all, by the way, so to try to like stand out in a huge industry of $1 billion is a struggle. But I went through Google and I looked at all the search terms and for the industry that I was in, and Brand Merch was #1. And I saw that the trademark was open, the domain was open, so I snatched that, and now I'm the first organic search for Brand Merch, and I've never paid a dime for that. So I got on the first page of Google for free. So that got me in the game. And then the second thing I did was I grew an Instagram following. So I bought a camera, and I just started organically growing that. I got like 10,000 followers in a couple months, and that basically put me right off the bat, no budget at all. Wow.
Yeah, I think for us, what's interesting about the wine industry is it's one of the oldest industries out here, right? When you look at the longevity of how long people have been drinking wine. But it's what I like to call kind of a dusty industry. A lot of the new articles that you're seeing are that, consumers are not drinking as much wine. And we really attribute that to the traditional wineries not having to innovate or market differently. They're not marketing to the generations. It still is a very intimidating experience. And so one thing that we did is, of course, right back to that marketing point, when we're looking at building a brand for one, for women, and two, for people that look like us, we need to speak directly to them. And so listening to our customers constantly as we're creating products. But I would say our biggest hurdle in doing that is our consumers loved our wine, right? But it was almost selling ourselves to get on the shelves was a bit harder because our brand was so pretty, because it did look so different from everything else that we were upselling against. And so they thought, how could this possibly be good quality wine? We have an amazing winemaker on our team. He is part of our business. He has made wine for Opus One, Kendall Jackson. If you jot some of those names down and you look them up, they are very prominent in the wine industry. So our wine it's not only great quality, but it's also very consistent. So you're gonna get that consistency in every year that comes along. But I would say we really had to prove ourselves in that market. And once we were able to get on the shelf of Target, pretty much every retailer was willing to talk to us because they saw that we were selling at over 200% of our target goal. And that kind of got that, the new branding and the colorful images and the marketing directly to women, almost out of their brain as a barrier of entry. Well, the name too.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, it's a mom. Again, couldn't believe that Mom Juice was available.
Oh, yeah.
So purchase your trademarks and your domains immediately. You have a fun criteria.
Yeah, well, I feel like before I explain like how we broke in, I kind of have to explain the industry because it's one of the reasons it didn't have a lot of innovation is because people don't really know how it works. So each seats we operate with large sports entertainment venues and contract with the food subcontractors to provide the people component, so the service aspect of food and beverage operation. So layers to that relationship. You'll have Kenan Memorial Stadium, where the athletics department is kind of, taking ownership over that, or there's like a community involved, like Chapel Hill will have stakes in that stadium. And then they will subcon Airmark, who comes in and says, hey, you could handle food and beverage in-house, or that's a headache, but like low margins, you don't want to deal with that. Contract Airmark out. And then we come in and we subcon the subcon. And the only reason we ever were able to do that is because I was kind of working with a concession stand with the nonprofit, and how stadiums have staffed their stands for decades. They'll contract a local nonprofit and say, hey, you can fundraise for a season and make a bunch of money for your organization if you come operate this concession stand. So walked in there, ready to fundraise, I think it was like Habitat for Humanity sophomore year, and learned about the issue. And so I think innovating in the space, it started with really starting on the ground and learning that there was this massive labor issue that nobody really understood, because when you go to a football game, at least in the collegiate space, you're not looking for a 5-star burger, you're looking for the game. That shift in consumer expectations started to occur post-COVID, and that's also when we were starting to get our traction. And so I think it's a little bit of like getting in there and understanding this like niche kind of opportunity, but also being on the ground, really feeling the problem, working with this nonprofit and seeing that it wasn't just UNC having this labor issue, it was pretty much every other stadium in the country that was using the same exact labor model. So yeah, I think innovating in the space, it was twofold where nobody was looking to innovate in it because it's kind of gone under the radar, and perfect timing with COVID and fits in NIL where athletics, the client started getting engaged saying, hey, I think you could make some money in food and beverage operation.
It's truly amazing that for each of your stories, you were able to find something that was still overlooked in an established industry. And Brittany, you brought up a point that, segues us to our next question about how you started and thought of funding in a creative way. For those who are thinking of starting their own business, especially in a saturated market, for each of you, what was the way that you had to be creative, or how did you find unique ways to fund your different ventures?
For me, I am not much of a risk taker, although I know that people say that's like an entrepreneurial trait. But for me, it took me 2 years before I quit my day job. So I started this on the side, and I was tripling my salary before I actually quit. So I was like, I needed to prove that this was a real thing. I wanted to create a very sustainable bootstrapped business, and that's kind of was my goal from the beginning. And so it takes a really long time, it was slow, but that's how I funded it, it's self-funded. I hope that I can continue it that way.
Funding is, I self-funded my first company, and it is a bootstrapping fun experience. But
You get creative.
you get very creative. I think when I throw numbers out, you wouldn't think that our winery is bootstrapped, but wine is very expensive to make. This fundraising environment is tough. Right now, our economy is really not, everyone is shy to write checks, and especially for CPG, which is what we categorize. Although food and bev, not everyone writes checks to alcohol companies, not everyone is writing checks to CPG. We are kind of at the bottom of the barrel. AI, which is so excited that you're getting into, is really at the top for the tech component of what's happening in fundraising right now. We have raised $1.1 million. We have a rolling round to open. We will continue to raise to the 3 million mark for this pre-seed. But I think that a lot of things, when you walk into funding, especially when you're competing in a market like we are, you have to stick to the true reason of why you created this company. And one of those for us was being, clean wine, ingredient transparency. When we started this journey, we were one of, I believe, 6 wineries that actually put our ingredients on the back of the bottle. A lot of people don't know the different, chemicals that you're drinking in wine. These vegetarians or vegans are out here drinking wine, and they're most likely drinking fish bladder, right? So it doesn't fit within their ethos of how they live their life. That's a big thing for us, is really stick to why you're making this product, and your investors are going to see why you're different and how you're being innovative in the market and why they should believe in you. Another thing that we did is we did a crowdfunding campaign. I would say this was right around the time when we brought on Target. We knew that that name would pull some weight. Also, we're building a brand for a community. Some industries aren't very sexy. You're not, you don't have people out here championing you, but CPG is, right? You have to have that community around you that's really championing your brand every single day. And for us, crowdfunding made sense. We did about 100,000 in a crowdfunding campaign. If you don't know what that is, you could look up some of the platforms like Start Engine, WeFunder. And you really want to run that campaign like a social media campaign. So you want to have someone on it every single day. You want to have a content calendar built out. You want to have updates built out. a lot of visuals and storytelling goes into this campaign, but it was a great way for us because now we have this team of soldiers, right? Who they may not be able to meet our $25,000 minimum to get on our cap table in that way, but they were able to join our crowdfunding campaign. So they truly are investors. They're on our cap table. They could write a check as little as $100, but these are the people we're asking about our merch that we're launching. We're asking about a new label design, really getting them involved, because the more involved they are, the more excited they are to talk about this. Right, so say we had 100 investors come from that, now we immediately have 100 people talking about us, because if we win, they win. So that was something a little bit different within the fundraising realm that I had not done in my experience as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, similar bootstraps. So I think starting out fundraising with this nonprofit, did not know that was going to be a business at the time. It was just, hey, I worked fast food growing up, and I thought it was really interesting how nothing was organized, and it was a mess, and all the POS were broken, and there's no ketchup, and all those things. I thought it was fascinating, and so I just kept working in the space. And I think working on the ground and just taking that action over time, recognized that there was this need that maybe other students might want to get involved. But I think it was always a clear understanding of, just an intimate understanding all the way down to the catch-up of what really was happening, that proved that maybe there was some type of financial model here that could drive some profit. And what was interesting, we didn't need, there wasn't any overhead. As long as you could show up with the 30 staff, we were taking a cut of the sales. And so if we were generating more sales than our payroll, we were in the green. Obviously that green looked way different when we started to scale. But just having started in one concession stand and then continuing to grow within one stadium, and then having a lot of word of mouth through different locations, funded off of cash flows. But there was a point at scale when we kind of got on the radar of one of our large partners, and they came in, and up until that point, all of the people that were working with us primarily were students. Kind of our pitch was, we're going to bring the student gig economy to these sports entertainment venues. So instead of worrying about being understaffed and relying on these nonprofit groups, you're gonna trust seats to come in with some young energy and push sales like you've never seen before. That was the pitch. Then we had to make it happen. And I think over the course of that time, we all of a sudden looked up and we had 10 venues in a couple different states, and everybody was a 1099. Corporate called, and they're like, yeah, you're gonna have to flip every single one of your staff members to a W-2 employee, which I didn't know what that meant at the time, but
So expensive.
yeah,
That's what it means. It's
Yeah.
very, very expensive, and it's a headache.
yeah. And so I graduated, we had the season, we were making money. I was off of my parents' couch, and then our costs went up 38%.
And you were back on your parents'
Yeah,
couch.
exactly. And so coupled with that, it was okay, parents' couch, but also, am I gonna go to jail? Like, how do you onboard people at scale with a W-2? You have to eat, like, they're either I-9, you have to get all this, I can bore you with how much I know about behavior if I all this, but that introduced technology. We were like, we cannot continue to, preserve this gig experience, which is fast, fun, lucrative, onboarding. Like, you're gonna want to be able to sign up with us, go work a game, and get paid, have a great time. The fast component required us to develop our own technology around onboarding, which then, took not only the little margins we had, but all margins we had to kind of pour it into technology. And so I think the key to growing there was just being unbelievably scrappy and cheap. Like, we did not spend any money on anything unless we absolutely had to, because it was all kind of channeled into developing our product, which was now, the foundation of what we do, a massive HR tool that allows us to, contract with these venues, recruit, onboard, schedule, pay, and get them coming back at scale. But it was all, bootstrapped. And I hope we can keep it that way. But I think I wasn't a mom, I was able to be selfish, and I think that kind of timing was really, it helped out. So we didn't mind the Motel 6s and stuff. That's fine.
Well, Mary Lacey, since you brought up technology, we're in this incredible time in history right now where technology is shifting, consumer expectations are evolving. I'd love for each of you to just tell us a little bit about how you stay ahead of industry trends in each of your respective fields. And then also how you're still finding ways to introduce innovative solutions and keeping your team creative.
Yeah.
You want to
Bring it back,
start?
bring it back. Yeah, I think when you talk about technology, it's like when I was first starting out in Scott Albert's class, there was never a world where we were talking about like, oh, this is a technology solution. Like if it was tech, this Fortune 500 company would have developed it, right? And they would have solved the problem. It was an intimate understanding that this is a people issue, but you can't scale and actually solve this truly unless you develop a technology that assists with that solution. And so by starting out and really, really, truly understanding what the human component of the solution is, we were able to develop a technology tool that understands A to Z what we're trying to build. And so I think being intimate with your problem and understanding just developing a technology is not the solution. You have to have a customer, you have to have someone like willing to put money behind it. And sometimes they're putting money behind that last mile, whatever that is in your industry. They're not putting money behind this fancy tool you have. Like the tool has to have, execution. And so when you think about our tool, they're paying for us to show up with 1,400 people at the US Open and actually execute on that service. We know technology is the only reason we're able to do that. Not the only, one of the massive reasons we're able to do that, and continuing to develop that tool to stay ahead of that like pairing and being aware of when we're talking about what we do, who we're pitching to. Because obviously if I wanted to get some VC valuation, we are totally a tech company that staffs these stadiums. But we also know at the end of the day, it's a pairing, and you can't forget the true problem you're solving. You can't forget what they're paying for. So I think keeping that at the forefront of development has been really helpful.
I think with us, it's developing products is interesting because you want to take a risk, but you're like, oh, am I shaking shit up a little too much, right? There's really sexy innovation where it's like, great, we have a single serve coming out, we're launching it on Mother's Day. There's almost common sense innovation where we add a non-alcoholic sparkling to our, lineup because we want to service the entire life cycle of motherhood when we have breastfeeding or pregnant moms, right? That makes sense, especially with the NA boom right now. And then there's like the listen to your customer type, know who you're serving innovation. And this is the unsexy example of, am I shaking this up too much? Are the wine people actually gonna like this? But we surveyed our market on something pretty early on. Our first run of wine, we did cork. But what's really important to our consumer and the newer generations is sustainability. And with that, corks are not sustainable. There's a lot of cutting of the tree, a lot of labor, a lot of moving parts to get a cork. But it was more of the traditional viewpoint of wine. And we surveyed our market and they were completely okay with screw tops. It was wild to us. And you had seen screw tops in the market on either really low end wine, which we were not serving, we're more in that middle grade, or, predominantly on white wine, never really on reds. And so when we went to Napa and we screw topped all of our wine in this run, Napa thought we were crazy. And now we go back and something so simple of knowing that our consumer, when they like convenience, our moms really just don't even have time. They're like, I need to crack this open. I want convenience, and we care about sustainability. And so those two factors came in, and it was actually a cheaper cog on our end to not do the cork. So it was like a win-win. But we go back to Napa now and they're like, wow, you guys are so innovative. You're putting screw tops on all of your wine and your consumer loves it. And we're like, that was a really common sense decision for us that our consumer was telling us they wanted, but we were a little bit nervous because Napa was so hesitant to make the change. And they were, putting their nose up to us cheapening our brand by doing this. So I think that there are different levels of innovation within your company, but it always comes back to knowing your consumer, listening to what they're asking for, keeping your ear to the streets, right? Get used to waking up in the morning or going to bed, reading about your industry and what other people are doing. I have a lot of involvement in what like a merger or acquisition would look like for our brand. Therefore, I'm reading constantly about all of the people buying, or adding food and bev into their portfolios. A lot of PE firms randomly pulling things in that is like, why are they doing this? What makes that so exciting? And I think that that not only keeps you in a good place to stay ahead of the game, but it keeps you creative, right? You're like, well, oh, they did that, and then you start thinking about all these things. And I could be reading an article about Blackstone acquiring Oatly, and it has nothing to do with wine, but just the way that they branded and the way they selected who they're going to be partnering with moving forward to grow that brand, maybe something clicked, and now we're making tiny shifts to get to the bigger goal.
See, I didn't know that corks were less sustainable, so I feel like a large part of that is just like educating the customer.
Yeah.
I would then be happy to have a screen top.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, this industry is so sensitive to global events that the past 5 years, it's like innovation is not, it's been a necessity to provide. And so it started with COVID, and everything changed. I'm very dependent on the global supply chain, so I do imports, exports. So I feel like every other month I start to get comfortable and plan, and then something happens and I have to change. So I guess I've just been in a constant state of innovation. I think my favorite quote is from Mike Tyson, like, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. I think that's like my life motto now. I was just starting to plan to grow, and then, tariffs are gonna go up, and now I have to figure that out. So staying innovative in this industry didn't change for 20 years. And so coming into it, I was already kind of had an advantage because I was younger than my competitors. I was in the Bay, and then that happened, and it's just people went remote, so the game changed, and then everyone wants more sustainable goods, which is really hard. It's an extremely unsustainable industry. And then, yeah, dealing with imports, exports. So innovation's just kind of been the mode I've been in for like 5 years.
Wow.
And I'm just ready to have to innovate again to just stay alive, really. But
Constantly innovating.
Yeah.
That's also a quote that I really like. Although, none of us love to be punched in the face, like it does happen. And resiliency is such a key to entrepreneurship, especially in these established industries. Can each of you share with us the toughest setback you experienced? I think Mary Mason, you kind of touched on it already. And what did the experience teach you about resiliency?
oh God, which one?
I was like, you're resilient every day.
Yeah, COVID. I couldn't have even. I don't think any business could really understand. I was living in San Francisco when that happened. It was really strict over there. And before COVID, I mean, I thought I was like Jesus. Like everyone was just giving me money. I could just like get an order from anyone. I was just like, I have it now. And then I remember it was like February 2020. I made, it was like $220,000 that month. That was double what we had made last year. And I had hired a small team. I had a little office in downtown San Francisco. And then I just didn't think anything could take that down. And then overnight, literally March, I think they declared it was a pandemic. And I was mostly doing just events. We weren't a technology company at all then. And all the events stopped for 2 years. And not only that, all of my customers were in tech. I didn't diversify my portfolio, and tech got hurt really bad. And so all of the spending stopped. And not only that, in March, I declared zero in revenue after making such a big month in February. We were also negative because people put a hold on payments. So I was almost equally in debt of, going after all of these outstanding payments. So that was tough. I had to let go of that whole team. I had to pay money to get out of that lease. And then I think it was like 2 months, I just sat on the couch and tried to figure things out. I watched that whole show Alone. Have you guys seen that show? And they just take a guy and they put him in the woods and he has to figure out how to survive.
You're like, this is me right now, but in my living room.
I remember thinking like I'm gonna have to live off the land. That's what I'm gonna do. But then I remember reading an article that said something like beer sales were up 600%. And I thought like, okay, my world ending and the tech, San Francisco's ending, but obviously there's industries that are doing really well. And so then I went through and I made a list of like every article I found that was any industry that was doing good that was outside of the tech industry. And it was beer, it was like at-home meal kits like HelloFresh, it was Peloton their sales had skyrocketed. So then I went on a mission to just go through every single person in my network and every person in their network to find people, and I ended up landing, that's when I landed Anheuser-Busch as a client, and HelloFresh, SoulCycle, L'Oreal, those all came later, so that helped me survive, I just had to diversify. But it was a whole other game too, because everyone was remote now, so the way they were ordering was different, also they were retail clients, I'd never worked with them. And so I had to just develop this entire new skill set. Like I remember going into one of my first meetings with one of the retail merchandisers, and they were saying words that I had not, they were like, you know, make sure the UPC is the FOC and come to this thing, and I'm like, those are words that I do know, I definitely know those, let me go to the bathroom. But yeah, I had to completely change to adapt, and that's when we kind of became a technology company, because everyone was diverse, and we had to have some kind of way for people with diverse, dispersed teams to manage goods and things like that, so kind of merged these accounts.
You make so many good points in your story. I feel like entrepreneurship is really almost glamorized now with social media. I feel like no one's telling the real truth of what it's like to be an entrepreneur, and you have to be so resilient. It's crazy. You almost live in alternate realities, right? Like you walk into a room to fundraise and you're like, I am Jesus. And you should give me this, right? And then you go out, and I remember in my first company, my car was about to be repossessed because they quit my job too early, cashed out my 401k to build this technology, and couldn't pay my car payment. And I'm like, oh thank God, my car is still here in the parking lot right now. Like, I didn't know how that worked. Like, are they following you around trying to find your car? Like what address do they have on file? Like, hopefully it's not UNC Chapel Hill. But no, it's, it's crazy. I definitely think that my first company, first time entrepreneurship journey, even the beating that I take today, and when I tell you the beatings, like 2 people wanting to sue you in one day, and the labels didn't show up on time, and we just signed a deal with American Airlines, and they're picking the wine up at 4:00, so oops, right? Like things like that are just, oh my God, this is gonna kill our brand. But that first entrepreneur journey was insane. I started a tech company in long short, we were mobilizing the beauty industry. If you wanted your hairstylist to come to you, your nail technician to come to you, you're not allowed to mobilize their license. So we launched with a big splash, and I got a cease and desist. So I was driving from Charlotte to Raleigh every single day in an attempt to change the law, and became a lobbyist rather than an entrepreneur at that point. And it was really killing my passion. And when I tell you, yeah, my car was almost getting repossessed, I was, in a beauty industry going and I was trying to represent myself as this person who obviously gets these services. I couldn't afford these services, show up and try to look the part. It was really, really tough. But I feel like, thank God I never gave up, because if I wasn't resilient, or if I let that experience scare me, I wouldn't be where I am right now. And a lot of what you talk about on being on the ground is why I sold my first company. You have to almost keep a journal and remind yourself why you started. What are you learning in this chapter? If you're in corporate America, what can you extract from this experience that is going to make you a better leader? They have all of the systems and processes already put together. HR, what kind of coaching conversations are you having? Take your one-on-one sheet from your manager and use it someday, right? Little stuff like that. But I worked for Wells Fargo for 7-8 years, and everyone thought it was fancy. I was in finance. I was selling bank products, right? That's how I made all my money, and I made a good living. But so yeah, I kind of took that on-ground experience, and this couple met me at an investor event, and they were like, we're trying to build technology that's similar to yours. And I was like, wow, I feel like I could faint at any moment because I'm trying to change a law that is like not changeable. And if you need technology that's similar to mine, let me provide you a turnkey solution and sell this to you. So it was not the exit that I had planned, but I did have enough money to pay out my team, to go in and make some strategic investments, and then eventually get myself here and becoming our first investor in Mom Juice, and now investing over $1 million in women and people of color. So, Yeah, I mean, the entire experience is wild. It like really lace up your boots because I do feel like we have the hardest job on earth.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I can point out like one specific like really hard moment because I feel like every time I do, then like tomorrow it's gonna be the harder moment.
Karma.
Yeah, I kind of not remember, but no, but I mean like pivot is like a buzzword obviously in entrepreneurship, but like when I think through Eat to Seat's journey, it was just constant like pivots, whether it was like with personnel making the wrong decisions and getting the wrong people involved, or dying on the hill for like your original idea. Like our name is Eat to Seats, which sounds like we do food delivery, and I was like, that's what I thought we were gonna do. When I was working in concessions, I was like, this is such a mess. I'm like really interested in it, but also like, this is such a mess. I don't want to, that's not sexy. When you're talking about sexy ideas, I was like, you know what's sexy? Staying in your seat at the Dean Dome and having us deliver your hamburger so you don't have to leave your seat at the Dean Dome. Eats to Seats. And so we partnered with this food delivery app, Sexy, and launched So Sexy. And then we went to go deliver the burger and realized you can't deliver it unless someone's making the burger. And nobody's making the burger because there's a labor issue in this space. And you can't innovate unless you solve the root issue, which is how are we actually coming in and providing a service solution for this industry that is super sporadic. You're working 7 weekends for a football game. There's, night games, evenings, playoff games, everything's popping up. Nothing is consistent. And until we can figure out how to successfully provide some stability in that chaos, we're never really going to be able to bring, food delivery or these sexy ideas with technology to the plate. And I think getting back to that understanding of, hey, what is it that we're doing, allowed us to, I think, survive and be agile, where it's like, okay, when you're very much aware of what's wrong with what you're doing or what you want to be doing, you're able to pivot much easier. And I think it was accepting the fact that I've had now 4 different ideas that just keep not working and maybe just listen to what's working. And so yeah, looked up and we were a massive staffing company with 18,000 people using our systems, technically W-2 employees. And through that, I could list out 50 million different face punches, but one that I think really I remember, and it went back to something you said where it's like the sexy part, like you keep wanting to have these ideas, don't forget like who's showing up for you and who's paying you. And I had 2 employees officially like on the full-time team, and then all of these employees for event work. And we had developed the technology to officially transition to W-2s. So we were able to we had to build our own payroll system essentially. And to do so, it was all coding. And then our coder quit. And we had 84 payrolls, 600 people that needed a paycheck, and I failed Comp 110 my freshman year. So I had to sit there and learn how to code. And I just remember sitting, like I sat there for a week straight, like comma, semicolon, like trying to figure out how to get these people paid. And then I started getting pictures. It was like, my fridge is empty, which was a little dramatic, but like people were like, it was like pitchforks, I'm gonna get sued and go to jail. And then I looked in the mirror, I was like, wait, I'm just gonna Venmo all these. Like, I'm just gonna Venmo. I'm like, I'm gonna get them paid. And so I used my Venmo, my grandma's Venmo, my dad's Venmo, my mom's Venmo, and we got through that moment. But it was this like pause of like, we need to stop. Like, until we really understand, people showed up for us, we gotta pay people. Let's stop scaling, stop saying yes to all these people wanting to work and, allow us to come to these stadiums and really understand like, what at the end of the day do we have to execute on? We got to show up with tons of people and we got to pay those people so that they come back. And getting back to that reality where it's like payroll is super not sexy. Staffing concessions, super, you could say not sexy, we make it sexy, but like you could say it's not sexy. But embracing that and really stop lying to yourself when you're through those moments and then you want to like, when you're on this high, and I think entrepreneurship is weird because like it is like I don't know, the roller coaster, but also like you're kind of a gambler. Like you get so addicted to that high, and sometimes it can like make you forget that there's a valley coming, and the valley's coming because you're focused on the high. Like you're focused on the pitch deck, you're focused on like, what is this when in reality it's in front of you, and you really have to be very intimate with those, with that definition, or you're gonna keep getting punched in the face. So yeah, that's one of many.
I mean, I really appreciate, and I'm sure everyone here really appreciates how honest and authentic all of you are, and really being, vocal about how entrepreneurship is a little bit more of the process than it really is the end result. I want to make sure I stay on time. Adeze, do we have time for one more panel question, or should we open up to the audience? All right, well, thank you all for sharing about your experience in answering these questions. If anyone in the audience has a question that they'd like answered, you want to we don't have microphones, so I'll just point and you just make sure you speak out.
Okay, hi, thank you all so much for sharing your stories and sharing like the challenges as well. Do you mind sharing some of the fun parts? Like, it's glamorous and really enjoyable. Love to hear that.
Fun parts. Okay. I think what's really cool one thing that's really cool to me as a mom is that my kids have seen me now have an idea and now put it on the shelves of some, I just mentioned American Airlines, I've mentioned Target. We launched Food Lion in January in multi-state, right? Places where they can walk in and they're like, holy cow, I think to me that's so important, right? The people that we're, building and implementing all day is so cool. We've got a lot of really great moments. I think to also your point of like you can get caught up in your high, and then the valley will come. Is sometimes you're scaling it so quickly that you don't even realize the wins that you've had. So taking moments to actually celebrate some of the things you're like, holy cow, I just did that, is really exciting. But no, you meet so many great people and you're building something at mass. So, you're getting the pitchfork, I have nothing in my refrigerator pictures, but on the positive note is that you're also feeding someone's family every time you pay that paycheck. You are creating a product that women feel really good about putting in their bodies because they know what's actually in it, and I think that there's something humbling about that. It's really nice.
Yeah, the accomplishment you feel makes all of that struggle worth it. Like when you see it doing well. I mean, I actually, when it comes down to it, I love what I do. I love designing products. I love working with Converse now. It's going to be on a commercial. I get to see it out there as hard as that is. I mean, I think everything that I've gone through, you don't even think about it. It's just so rewarding. Maybe it's like having a kid. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's horrible, but great at the same time.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think you're made for this. It is true. You don't think about all of the, the punches that you take every day. You wake up as a solutionist. It's just finding you are finding the better solution every single time.
Yeah. I quoted the month last week. Don't focus on the problem, focus on the solution. There's a lot of problems, but there's also so many solutions, which is why you exist in this, like not as a human, but as an entrepreneur. One thing I've been so thankful for from the beginning. It took a village to staff that first concession stand. It was 8 people. And so it's always been so many different human beings that we get to work with. And I think as we grew, originally when we were just flying bathroom stalls, it was all students that were working with us. And then when we started to scale, utilizing Instagram and social media, we attracted all different types of individuals who found community in what we do. And I think one really interesting thing about our space is we're offering this gig opportunity for someone to come make some extra money. Like we're not trying to sell you on this is going to pay your rent. I don't want to contribute to this like minimum wage cycle or something like that. Hey, this is supposed to be a fun little like boost, for your beer money or whatever you want to do. Mom line, and to make sure, I think that's been core to our messaging, and by doing so, it's attracted we have, name another space, because when you think about gig work, you can talk about Uber or, Grubhub or Instacart. and it's individualistic. Like you are owning your time, which is really special. Like you're taking ownership of your time, but then when you're executing that like thing that you're wanting to do, whether it's, Grubhub or Instacart or something, you're alone. And what's really cool about what we do is you sign up on your own, you show up for yourself, but then you have to work with all these different human beings and you have to work as a team. And so when we scaled and realized, you can have a freshman who might just be there for the beer money, next to an MD PhD, next to a local sheriff, next to a teacher who needs some extra money because they're not paid enough. And then you can also have, someone who didn't graduate high school and is, trying to like help their daughter's dance uniforms out. And like, you all have to work together. And I think it was that like really interesting moment when you walked in this concession stand and you're like, everybody's just out here trying to make a buck. Like we're all just hungry. But everybody that shows up for us, that shows up on a Saturday, that says something about who they are. Like it's like this constant common denominator, regardless of who you are, that you're trying to improve whatever situation you're in. And that's been so fascinating and interesting because the humans of each seats and getting to meet the individuals across, several states now, just realizing that like very common denominator of like, you're hungry, like you are showing up for yourself. And hopefully when you show up for yourself, we can make it fun by getting to meet other people who share something similar to yourself. So I think that like reminder of like there are people benefiting from this, whether it's community or simply for their own goals, and how many human beings that we get to meet. It's really great. Yeah. We just gotta pay them,
Yeah, I have a question. I guess most of us, or let me speak for myself, I might be in that situation next year. But at the early phase of your entrepreneurship journey, how were you able to balance your 9 to 5 main job, the commitment to your main job, as well as you fueling your baby, which is your project?
I can talk to that. I did it for 2 years. For me, I had it as a side thing. Is that what you mean? Like, how did I have it? Like, it kind of went, all of my jobs just kind of cultivated into the skill set that I had to start this company. First, I worked at a print shop, and so it kind of added on the side of that. So it wasn't completely separate from what I was doing. I think that's probably how I was able to handle it. Then I worked at a promotional goods company where I learned about manufacturing and printer partnerships and things like that. And then I worked at a tech company where I was doing design and they needed swag. And so they were my first client and we kind of just had it. It was easy for me to go. But once I started getting more clients, it just got so big that I had to quit. But yeah, you work a lot. If you're doing a side thing, you're doing this, eventually you have to come to a point where you decide to take that leap and jump. For me, I just was waiting for the money to make sure it was legitimate. But yeah, I think it's just a lot more work. And hopefully you have a job that can support it in some way like mine did.
Part of the sacrifice too, right? It's just naturally part of the journey. And so maybe for a few years, you aren't going on all the trips or you're saying no to more of the social events. For me, it was about 3 years of not buying anyone presents, not traveling, not doing any of the cool things, but it's part of the journey. And, I didn't have the option to not work and just be a full-time entrepreneur. And so, you just dive in, and if you truly believe in it and yourself, then it's gonna feel like work, but it shouldn't. It's not that hard to make a decision every time.
I was in school, so I think it's a little different than 9 to 5, and I was thankful enough to have a scholarship that helped out with rent or whatever, the housing stuff. So I think I was definitely in a great position to be super selfish. But I think balance, I think this is where I've always struggled. Like balance is like, I'm like, you gotta define that for yourself. Like I think it's over, and maybe someone's like, give it 5 years, honey. Like you're gonna do that. Like, I think I never needed that. Like I never needed the 8 hours of sleep. Like I'm like, I can function with different amounts and I don't need to be told that I need this or that when I know what I need. And so I think understanding that, define your own balance for yourself, but also recognize like if you really want to do this, like you're gonna have to grind and like you're gonna have to hustle and like there's no like perfect formula or gallon jug of Stanley that you can drink to like solve all your issues. Like you're gonna have to just like get to it. And I think if you love it and you're like obsessed with the problem, which I think you have to be obsessed with it. Like I think when you first start out, you have to be obsessed. Like you have to be unbelievably passionate and obsessed. And like that won't feel like work. That's gonna be like, I can't wait to get off my 9 to 5 so I can go work on this.
That's true, you work around the clock and it doesn't feel like it.
No, you're like, I love this. Yeah.
It is an addiction.
No, I'm like, I think, yeah, you're like basically, you're gambling. I think you're gambling. I think just really thankful that this is what we can.
It's a good way. That's a way
Yeah.
to learn it.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, Delia.
Thanks all for being here. A lot of us, I think, at least myself, are thinking a lot about self-care and trying to make sure that we kind of have boundaries that we need to like live a thriving life. I know you all talked about there are no boundaries in this transitionary period, but I'm wondering during the valley moments, talk about like there's ups and downs, what did you do for yourself or wish that you had done for yourself to keep yourself motivated and going? And then if you wanted to add, or what was something that others did for you that you remembered that helped get you through?
Just show up, like, and people will show up for you. I'm like probably the worst. I don't have like a great, like go to the gym and eat the salad because I'm not doing that right now, and I feel like I'm in a valley. But like I just keep showing up. Like you just keep showing up. Like you show up, and I think it's funny because like when we do pre-shift huddles on site where it's like, and the first thing we say is like, number one, thank yourself because you showed up for yourself, and that says a lot about who you are. And like I guess just like make sure to thank yourself if you keep showing up. Just show up.
Yeah. You definitely have to show up even when you're down. I wish there was a better answer, and maybe we're saving the best for last. I think as a mom, they always say, right, put your oxygen mask on first, And so I always try to remind myself that, like, okay, in this moment, I'm feeling extremely overstimulated. I am on the verge of a breakdown. My kids are, who knows, right? I have 4 of them. It's wild. And so I just remind myself, do I need a breath right now? Do I need to go for a 20-minute run? I don't think that it's anything extravagant or like, some people are like, oh my gosh, I need to go to the spa. I need to do this. Like, no, what I need is 10 minutes to go and run. And I act like I'm a runner because not by choice, I'm a runner because it's efficient. I do like to work out, and I can just leave my house and go outside and do it and be back in 20 minutes. So I sprint 2 miles, pretend I'm running away from home. And then I come back really happy, right? So yeah, I am okay with not having balance. And I think that that's really what it took for me is I had to accept. I remember my selfish entrepreneur days, and I also did not have balance. I created very unhealthy, selfish to my goals, habits, and then I had children, and that all shifted, and now I had to lean into the chaos. And I'm like, guess what? This is a balancing of how much you can give situation, and that's all it is. And today I can be a really great wife and mom, and tomorrow I'm a really great business partner, and everyone just has to accept me. And I'm very transparent, like, hey, I have a sick kid today. Here's what I can give, and I will see you between 3 and 5, and that's all. Right? And I think people really appreciate that because they know what to expect. But my family, my husband, and my business partners know what to expect. And I'm not gonna feel bad about that. There's no way. I can have as much staff, I can sleep no hours, and everyone's still not gonna get 120%, which is how I like to at least perform or appear to be performing to everyone. And so just accept it and figure out what works for you, and don't think that it has to be something crazy like I need an annual vacation of it. Guess what? It's every schedule is not working right now. We're not taking a vacation, and if we are, we're probably working. And now one kid is jumping off a cliff. I don't know, right? So I think that just lean in and figure out what works for you, and be okay with the chaos. That's part of the fun. What's your balance story? Help us. We're sinking. I know. No balance.
This is like
Sorry.
the hardest part of entrepreneurship for me is keeping myself motivated, especially if you don't have any accountability. Like after I had to let everyone go, I was alone. I didn't get off the couch. I was like learning how to be a bushwoman. And there's to motivate myself is very hard sometimes. So I tend to put myself in situations where I have to be accountable, like getting my MBA. or having mentors in my life that kind of are like, next week, what are you doing? You have to, and just keeping people around me that make me accountable. I do.
That's really good advice for the valleys, because I wake up pretty self-motivated. And what I've found in these valleys with all of these other humans I'm taking care of and new responsibilities outside of entrepreneurship is wow, I'm in such a low right now. How could I possibly feel motivated today? And so I really like that.
This has been great. If I can sum up what we've heard today, which I mean, a lot of wisdom and advice and vulnerability, so we really appreciate that. I think in 3 key ideas, it's, show up, ride that wave, and when you crash, just get back up again. That innovation can take many forms, and that inspiration and innovation come from industries, the products, the problems, and also the people. So we really appreciate you guys taking the time to be here with us. I know I've taken a lot away from this, even as someone who doesn't identify as an entrepreneur. So thank you for sharing your journey with us, your time with us. We really appreciate you. We're all excited to use your services now or in the future. So we can all give the panelists a round.
Yes, round of applause for Hailey for her. Thank everyone for joining. Just a reminder that we still have other e-week events coming up, like one tonight. There's a couple more till the end of the week, so please come register. It's always going to be food. And yeah, thank you everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, it's all on. And do you want to? Saying not sexy industries.
Yes. Okay, I love it. Wait, I want to see. Okay, I'm gonna.
You should, go to London. If you're comfortable. You've never been.
For you guys.
We need to go. I want to tell girls. That's so
It's not, they formed when you were talking about that.
Yes.
So